coal seam gas industry is under pressure again today with news of a possible contamination of cancer-causing chemicals in Queensland. This follows a savage attack on the industry by the mining magnate Clive Palmer, who claims it will devastate the environment. Lateline has spoken to 3 of Australia's top water scientists, most of whom say more research is urgently needed. One key question is what to do with an estimated 30 million tonnes of salt that may have to be buried like nuclear waste. Margot O'Neill has a story.
From 4,000 coal seam gas wells in regional Queensland now to 30,000 in the next 10 or 20 years. It's a $60 billion gas rush that's caught governments napping about the impact on the environment. One of the biggest is what to do with tens of millions of tonnes of salt, which is a byproduct of extracting briny underground water to get at the gas hidden in the coal seams.
The back of the envelope estimate that I made of that would be that we would produce something like 10% of the annual salt production of the world over the 30-year period.
That's about 30 million tonnes of salt in Queensland alone. But there's nowhere to put it, as some companies admitted to a recent parliamentary committee.
Your people on the ground, who are very professional and highly qualified, weren't able to answer where the waste goes.
On the specifics of whether such a waste facility exists or not, I would need to obtain those technical details and come back to you.
It clearly disturbed some of the senators who are inquiring into the coal seam gas industry.
So we still don't have an answer, do we? I mean, look, guys, mining's great. You know, we've got to extract it, we've got to do it, but we haven't ticked all the boxes, have we?
Right now, the salt is largely stored in evaporation ponds, but within a few years, the quantities will be too great. The Queensland Government wants companies to convert the salt into marketable products, but experts believe underground storage will also be required.
If we have the capability to store nuclear waste, and we do, then we should have the capability to store salt for the future.
It's just one of the uncertain impacts of coal seam gas mining. There are also concerns about fragile underground water systems, or aquifers, used by farmers and towns. How will they cope with tens of thousands of coal seam gas wells likely to extract up to 300,000 megalitres of water each year for up to 30 years?
We are not in a position to really put our hands on our hearts and say we know with absolute certainty what the impacts are, both in local terms and cumulative terms, for this industry. There is really the potential for very serious consequences for this sort of activity if we're not careful.
Here's how it works. Companies suck out water from underground coal seams to release and capture the gas. But other surrounding aquifers with cleaner water can also be depressurised, making it harder for farmers to access their water. One limited study funded by industry found that aquifers used for stock and domestic purposes could be affected across 17,000 square kilometres in southwest Queensland. And this wouldn't be evident for 30 or 40 years after wells had passed peak use.
It can get to the stage if it depressurises so much that in fact what's going to happen is you may end up having trouble accessing water at all.
There are also concerns about the possibility of contamination between aquifers, either through mixing clean and dirty water or from the use of chemicals in some cases to help loosen the gas, a process known as fracking. Federal and state governments believe with monitoring they can jump on any problems, but presently there's no regulation to enforce long-term monitoring of water levels or quality after a project has been abandoned.
The impacts will take a long time to occur, and my concern is that once you find those impacts out, that it may be too late to mitigate those impacts sensibly.
And we've just been doing some modelling of it.
Another problem, most of the data and analysis to date has been done by the companies themselves. It's not independently verified in peer-reviewed science.
I think that there is a real issue around the transparency of the research.
The companies can't be held to blame. This is their investment. The question is, where is the government's investment, or where has the government's investment been?
Some government-backed research is now underway, but experts believe it'll be years before the detailed science is clear, including how some aquifers could take thousands of years to recover.
If we're not careful, we could in fact not only be mining coal seam gas, but also potentially mining the groundwater resource itself.
The key question is whether these uncertainties mean the industry should be slowed or even suspended.
My view at the moment is not. My view is that from what we've seen and what we understand of the systems, that over the general broad areas of extraction, the exchange of water between layers will be slow and will be quite minor.
Most scientists we interviewed say it should proceed, but cautiously, and with far greater government intervention in research, monitoring and regulation. Margot O'Neill, Lateline.